Today, I'd like to present on optimizing polar observing through interoperable asset-level metadata sharing across polar observing systems. Along with Roberta Pirazzini with FMI, I co-chair a new effort under SAON called the Polar Observing Assets Working Group. So broadly speaking, there is recognized need for an integrated polar observing system with a means of identifying strengths and gaps, a knowledge map to clarify directions, and ways to build capacity to better meet observing needs. Progress toward an integrated system, however, fundamentally rests on knowing which activities and assets are already in place. Where are the gaps and overlaps, and how can we better plan and implement observing to meet objectives? In other words, how do we know where to go if we don't know where we've been or even where we are now? So the challenge in this space is obtaining a comprehensive perspective across a diverse and fragmented range of observing systems. And furthermore, only a small fraction of the hundreds of observing systems share metadata about specific observing assets in ways that can be compiled or assessed. And the real challenge is the lack of interoperability across portals and catalogs. So many share metadata elements through custom metadata structures and vocabularies, resulting in apples and oranges that are difficult to harmonize. Most do not share the information through machine readable access, and many simply present the information as a table on a web page or a PDF. And there are many networks that do not share asset level information externally, although they have the information for their own internal goals. So, and most important, there is much duplicated effort reinventing the wheel each time. So here we are talking about metadata describing observing assets, not scientific data sets that come from those assets, but assets such as individual observing sites, platforms, instruments, wherever repeat measurements have been made, like boreholes, moorings, flux towers, etc. And also buoy tracks, ship tracks, field transits, or major observatories and field research stations, such as super sites. Individually funded field-based research projects, field campaigns or expeditions, and the coordinating initiatives, programs, networks, research infrastructures, or observing systems themselves. In other words, we're talking about interoperability and metadata for observing assets above and beyond scientific data sets. So what would be very helpful is if observing systems shared basic discovery level metadata elements about networks, projects, sites, and more, speaking the same language and in compatible ways. So granted, there are some asset level catalogs sharing metadata interoperably. For example, here are several that have public facing endpoints for site level metadata, and they use ISO and various flavors, or WIGOS or Inspire, one of the few standards that apply. And standardized transfer protocols such as OAI PMH. But there are tens of other portals, if you will, that with custom schemas and without machine readable access. And there have been valuable inventories of observing systems, networks, and programs. Those concepts overlap some, including the new EU PolarNet survey with associated recommendations. But note that these inventories themselves do not conform to interoperable standards for organization level metadata, say, or with complete access. So to assist with progress towards an integrated polar observing system or system of systems, a new polar observing assets working group was formed earlier this year under the SAON Committee on Networks and Observations, SAON-CON, with the goals of making observing related metadata more fair, promoting best practices for interoperability, and to help span the entire spectrum of science from funding and planning through observing to the data that we can then link to. So overall, to reduce effort while showcasing and integrating across multiple systems. We are focused on these three specific tasks that are achievable in the short term. Creating a registry of polar observing systems that focuses on interoperability parameters, building crosswalks and facilitating existing tools and solutions for translation or for controlled vocabularies that are relevant, and creating a guide to make it easier for individual networks to create, populate, expand, and deploy catalogs, saving time and effort while reaching their own internal goals. So currently we are working on use cases and a metadata model for the registry of observing systems. We meet the second Thursday of each month. Feel free to sign up at polarobservingassets.org to attend the meetings, to receive updates through our email list, or have access to resources through our shared Drive folder. Thank you.